The sky burned red that day. Not the gentle crimson of sunset, but the angry scarlet of a wound torn open across the heavens. Jack Miller stood on the rooftop of his apartment building, watching as the massive ships descended through the clouds. They weren't like anything humans had designed, no wings, no engines visible, just enormous black triangles sliding through the atmosphere in perfect formation. "This can't be happening," he whispered, though no one was there to hear him. 3 days earlier, the strange objects had appeared at the edge of the solar system. World leaders had assured everyone there was nothing to fear. Scientists called it the greatest discovery in human history. The stock market soared with companies promising alien technology partnerships. Then the communications blackout began. Then the power grid failed. Then they came. The first blast hit downtown. A beam of intense blue light shot from the underside of the lead ship, and in an instant, the city center was gone. Not burning, just gone, replaced by a perfect crater of scorched earth. The shockwave knocked Jack to his knees, the concussion rushing over him like a physical wave. Training kicked in. 8 years in military engineering hadn't prepared him for aliens, but it had taught him how to survive. Jack grabbed his pre-packed emergency bag, the one his friends had mocked him for keeping, just in case, and ran for the stairs. The streets below were chaos. People running, screaming, cars crashed into one another. More beams struck across the city, each one erasing another section of human civilization. Jack kept his head down and moved with purpose toward the outskirts. The old mining tunnels outside town might offer shelter, if he could reach them. "Help. Please." A young man was pinned under a fallen street light. Against better judgment, Jack stopped. Together they freed the man's leg. Tom, he said his name was, and they continued together, gathering a few more survivors as they fled the city. By nightfall, they had reached the abandoned mining complex. 12 people huddled in the darkness, listening to distant explosions. No one spoke much. What was there to say? The world was ending above them. "You military?" Tom asked, noticing Jack checking the tunnel supports. "Was. Combat engineer." "You?" "High school teacher. Physics." Tom laughed bitterly. "Guess I should have studied alien physics instead." Days passed in the tunnels. Their small group grew as more survivors found their way to them. Jack organized them, assigning duties, rationing supplies. They had a doctor, some with hunting experience, and a radio operator who tried endlessly to contact anyone else. A week after the invasion, they got their first glimpse of the invaders. A patrol near the tunnel entrance reported seeing them, tall, armored figures moving with precision through the ruins. They weren't collecting bodies or searching for survivors. They were setting up equipment, taking samples of soil and water. "They're surveying," Jack said, watching through binoculars from a concealed position. "Cataloging resources." "Why not just kill us all?" asked Rita, a former police officer who had joined their group. "Because dead planets don't produce," Tom replied. "They need workers." He was right. 2 weeks later, they witnessed the first collection. Huge machines rolled through the remains of the city, herding captured humans into transport vessels. Those who resisted were not killed but immobilized with some kind of energy weapon that left them conscious but paralyzed. "They're calling themselves the Dominion," said Marcus, their radio operator, after finally making contact with another survivor group. That's what they announced to the military bases before destroying them. "You are now under the authority of the Dominion." 1 month after the fall, their tunnel community had grown to nearly 50 people. They had begun organizing raids for supplies, avoiding the alien patrols. On one such mission, Jack found something unexpected in the ruins of a military installation, plans for a research facility, buried deep in the mountains 200 miles north. They were working on experimental weapons there, Jack told the others that night. Things that might actually hurt these bastards. A suicide mission, Rita warned. Maybe, Jack admitted. But I'm tired of hiding. Who's with me? Hands raised in the dim light of their underground sanctuary. Not everyone, but enough. They think they've crushed us, Jack said quietly. They don't understand what humans do when backed into a corner. We fight back. 6 months into the occupation, Earth had transformed. Sprawling alien structures dominated the skylines of former cities. Massive mining operations carved deep wounds into the planet's surface. The Dominion operated with ruthless efficiency, processing resources and organizing human labor camps with mechanical precision. But beneath the conquered surface, humanity persisted. Jack's group had made it to the research facility, finding it partially intact and, more importantly, unoccupied by the Dominion. The underground complex became their base of operations, equipped with generators, laboratories, and enough military hardware to arm a small force. Got another one, Tom said, adjusting the modified radio equipment. The physics teacher had proven remarkably adept at understanding and repurposing technology. Survivor group near what used to be Portland. About 30 people. Jack nodded. Make contact. Offer the usual arrangement. Their network had grown steadily, connecting scattered resistance cells across the continent. Each group shared information, resources, and the occasional triumph, a raided supply depot, a disabled Dominion patrol. Jack, you need to see this. Dr. Lisa Reynolds, a biochemist who had joined them 2 months ago, waved him over to her makeshift lab. I've been analyzing the samples we collected from the dead Dominion soldier. The alien corpse had been a rare find, one of their patrols caught in a landslide. The Resistance had retrieved the body before the Dominion could recover it. Their physiology is fascinating, Lisa continued, pointing to microscope slides. But more importantly, they have extreme sensitivity to certain mineral compounds found naturally on Earth. Specifically, a combination of copper sulfate and an element I've never seen documented before. Tom leaned in. You're saying we found their kryptonite? I'm saying we might have a weapon, Lisa replied. 2 weeks later, Jack led a small team on their first offensive mission. They had synthesized the mineral compound into aerosol form and loaded it into small canisters. Their target, a minor Dominion outpost overseeing a labor camp. Remember, we don't know how effective this will be, Jack cautioned as they approached through the forest at night. Priority is freeing the prisoners without casualties. The attack was a revelation. When deployed, the mineral compound caused the aliens to convulse immediately, their armored environmental suits seemingly unable to filter out the particulates. The team freed 58 humans with no resistance losses. It works, Lisa said when they returned, her voice filled with wonder and grim satisfaction. It actually works. News spread through the Resistance network like wildfire. Other cells began replicating the weapon using Lisa's formula. For the first time since the invasion, humans had a tangible advantage. The Dominion responded with brutal efficiency. Labor camp security tightened. Patrols increased. And when they found suspected Resistance locations, they didn't bother with capture anymore, they simply obliterated the area from orbit. They're scared, Jack observed, watching satellite imagery of a destroyed mountain range where a Resistance cell had been operating. They never expected Resistance. Scared means dangerous, Rita countered. She had become Jack's second-in-command, her police training invaluable for security operations. We need to be smarter, not just bolder. Marcus, their communications specialist, burst into the room. We intercepted something. The Dominion Central Communication Hub is routing new orders to all outposts. Something big is happening. The intercepted messages revealed a chilling discovery: the ships currently on Earth were merely an advance force. A second wave of Dominion vessels was approaching, a colonization fleet carrying millions. We have 8 months before they arrive, Jack told the assembled resistance leaders, connected via secure video link. If Earth is still under Dominion control when they get here, humanity is finished. What's the plan? Asked the leader of the European resistance cell, her face gaunt from months of struggle. Jack unfolded a map showing a massive Dominion supply depot. We hit them where it hurts. All of us, together. We show them that taking Earth was their biggest mistake. 3 days later, in a coordinated strike involving 6 resistance cells and over 200 fighters, they destroyed the depot in a massive explosion visible from space. As they watched the facility burn from a safe distance, Tom placed a hand on Jack's shoulder. They thought they'd crushed humanity, he said quietly. Jack nodded. They're about to learn otherwise. The prison camp sprawled across what had once been fertile farmland, surrounded by towering electric fences and watched by automated turrets. Inside, thousands of humans shuffled between barracks and work assignments, thin figures in identical gray jumpsuits. The Dominion guards stood at intervals, their armor gleaming under the harsh floodlights. Security pattern is consistent, Rita whispered, lowering her binoculars. Shift change in 20 minutes. That's our window. Jack nodded, surveying the assembled resistance fighters hidden in the tree line. 123 men and women, the largest force they'd ever gathered, armed with a mixture of scavenged human weapons and repurposed Dominion technology. Each fighter carried Lisa's mineral compound, now nicknamed Blight, for its effect on the aliens. Everyone clear on the objectives? Jack asked the squad leaders gathered around him. Primary goal is prisoner extraction. Secondary is intel collection. Destroy what we can't take. The attack began with precision. Tom's team disabled the power grid with a targeted electromagnetic pulse, plunging the camp into darkness. As emergency systems activated, resistance fighters breached the perimeter at 3 points simultaneously, deploying blight canisters that sent the unprepared guards into convulsions. Jack led the central thrust, fighting his way toward the camp's command center. The resistance had learned to move fast. The Dominion's reinforcement protocols typically brought response teams within 15 minutes. Command center secured, Jack reported over the radio, as his team gathered computer cores and data storage devices. How's the evacuation? Moving faster than expected, Rita replied. These prisoners are military, they're organizing themselves. Among the liberated captives were officers, pilots, and special forces operatives from military units worldwide. The Dominion had separated them from general population camps, using this facility for what appeared to be observation and experimentation. They were studying our combat capabilities, explained Colonel Weber, the highest-ranking officer they'd freed. Testing our limits, our breaking points. The extraction completed with 2 minutes to spare before Dominion aircraft appeared on the horizon. The resistance fighters and freed prisoners melted into the forest as the first energy blasts scorched the earth behind them. Back at the research facility base, the impact of their success became clear. Colonel Weber and his fellow officers brought invaluable military expertise. The data stolen from the command center revealed Dominion patrol routes, communication protocols, and, most crucially, the location of their primary communication hub. But the victory came with consequences. 3 days after the prison camp raid, the Dominion launched reprisal attacks against suspected human settlements. Entire regions were scorched from orbit, regardless of whether they contained resistance fighters or simply civilians trying to survive. They're getting desperate, Lisa observed, analyzing new data from field teams. The blight compound is more effective than we anticipated. Their environmental suits can't filter it completely. Jack spent sleepless nights poring over the plans for the secret research facility's prototype weapons. Most were theoretical, designed to combat Earthbound threats, not alien invaders. But one project stood out, an experimental electromagnetic pulse device capable of disabling complex electrical systems across a wide area. If we could adapt this to target their neural network. Jack mused, showing the plans to Tom and Lisa. It's possible, Tom said, excitement building in his voice. Their communication technology operates on quantum principles, but the basic transmission methods might be vulnerable to a modified EMP. I'll need components we don't have, Lisa added. We'd need to raid a Dominion technology center. Jack looked at the growing map of resistance activities across the wall. Pins marked successful operations, crossed lines showed supply routes, and red circles indicated Dominion strongholds. For the first time since the invasion, the map showed more human victories than defeats. Then that's what we'll do, he decided. The raid on the Dominion supply depot was meticulously planned. 6 teams, approaching from different directions, timed to coincide with a solar flare that would disrupt Dominion detection systems. The Resistance had learned to use Earth's natural phenomena to their advantage, a home field edge the invaders hadn't anticipated. The operation succeeded beyond their expectations. Not only did they secure the components Lisa needed, but they destroyed the entire facility in their retreat, crippling Dominion supply lines across the region. As they watched the facility burn from their escape vehicles, Jack allowed himself a moment of hope. Humanity wasn't just surviving anymore, they were fighting back. And for the first time, they were winning. 2 years after the Dominion ships first darkened Earth's skies, the war had transformed. What began as desperate survival had evolved into a coordinated global resistance. Humanity, once on the brink of subjugation, now contested every resource site, supply line, and outpost. Jack stood in the command center of what had once been the research facility and was now the headquarters of the North American Resistance Front. Digital maps covered the walls, tracking resistance cells and Dominion movements across the continent. Communication links connected them to similar operations in Europe, Asia, and South America. Paris cell reporting successful operation, Marcus announced from his communication station. Dominion mining operation disabled, 17 human workers liberated. Jack nodded approval. Any casualties? None. They're using the new blight delivery system. Lisa's refinement of the mineral compound had progressed significantly. What began as a crude aerosol was now a sophisticated weapon that could be deployed in multiple forms, from area effect dispersal units to rounds that could be fired from modified human weapons. Supply status? Jack asked, turning to Rita. Better than expected. Captured Dominion equipment is supplying most of our energy needs. Food production in the underground facilities is meeting 60% of requirements. The rest comes from raiding and allied settlements. Colonel Weber entered, followed by his tactical team. The Australian front reports they've reclaimed their 3rd major city. Dominion forces are retreating to coastal strongholds. For months, humans had been reclaiming territory. Not just hiding or raiding anymore, actually pushing the Dominion back and holding ground. The aliens, designed for swift conquest rather than prolonged conflict, were struggling to adapt to human guerrilla tactics. Jack, you need to see this, Tom called from the laboratory adjoining the command center. He and Lisa had been working around the clock on what might be their most important breakthrough. The lab table held what appeared to be a modified Dominion communication device wired to human computer systems. Lisa looked exhausted but triumphant. We've developed a bioweapon that specifically targets their physiological systems, she explained. Not just a temporary disruption like blight, this attacks their cellular structure directly. Using Earth minerals they have no immunity to, Tom added. Combined with a delivery system that can piggyback on their own communication network. You're talking about a planet-wide deployment, Jack said, understanding the implications immediately. Lisa nodded solemnly. It would affect every Dominion soldier simultaneously. But we need access to their primary communication hub to upload it. The potential for a decisive victory was tantalizing. Yet as news of the bioweapon spread among resistance leadership, divisions emerged. Some argued for immediate deployment, regardless of cost. Others, including many of the military personnel, cautioned against using biological weapons even against invaders. "We can't become like them to defeat them," Colonel Weber argued during a heated strategy session. "Using a planet-wide bioweapon crosses a line we may never come back from." "They crossed that line when they came here," countered Rita. "This is survival." Jack found himself caught between these perspectives. The Resistance wasn't just fighting for survival anymore, they were fighting for what kind of world would emerge if they won. While the debate continued, the Dominion made their own decisive move. New ships arrived, not the massive second wave they had feared, but specialized command vessels carrying elite Dominion forces and advanced weapons systems. "They're adapting," Jack realized as reports flooded in of Resistance positions being targeted with terrifying precision. "They've studied our tactics." The counterattack was devastating. Within days, Resistance strongholds that had stood for months fell to the new Dominion offensive. Advanced detection systems located hidden bases. Improved environmental suits neutralized the advantage Blight had provided. Jack's headquarters remained secure, protected by advanced countermeasures and its remote location. But as he studied the incoming reports, he watched their hard-won gains eroding rapidly. "We need to move on the communication hub now," he told his leadership team. "Before we lose everything." "With what forces?" Rita asked. "Half our fighting units are cut off or in retreat." Jack unfolded a map of the Dominion's primary Earth installation, a massive complex built into what had once been Mount Rainier. At its center stood the quantum communication array that linked every Dominion unit on the planet to their command structure. "We don't need an army," he said quietly. "We need a small team that can get inside and deploy Lisa's program." "A strike force." "That's a suicide mission," Colonel Weber said bluntly. Jack looked around at the faces of the people who had fought alongside him for 2 years. "Then I'll need volunteers." The remaining Resistance strongholds burned across the continent. Dominion forces, with their new adaptive technology and tactics, systematically dismantled 2 years of human progress in just 3 weeks. The elite alien soldiers moved with precision that hadn't been seen since the initial invasion, targeting leadership, supply caches, and communication nodes. In the underground command center, now operating on emergency power, Jack finalized preparations with his volunteer strike team. 8 people, all that remained of their main fighting force after a devastating attack 3 days earlier. "The Dominion mothership maintains geosynchronous orbit here," Jack explained, pointing to the holographic display. "Our captured shuttle can approach under the guise of a routine supply run." "Assuming the codes still work," Tom said. The physicist had slimmed down considerably over 2 years of Resistance fighting, his once scholarly appearance replaced by hardened determination. "They're cycling security protocols every 12 hours now," Marcus confirmed from his communication station. "Our window closes in 9 hours. Lisa entered the briefing room, carrying a metal case. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. She hadn't slept in 3 days, working to perfect their one hope of victory. "The neural disruptor is complete," she announced, opening the case to reveal a device no larger than a human hand. "Once connected to their main communication array, it will send a signal that disrupts their neural network. Not lethal, but it will essentially paralyze their command structure." "For how long?" Colonel Weber asked. Despite his initial reluctance, the military officer had volunteered immediately for the mission. 30 minutes, maybe an hour, Lisa replied. "Long enough to disable their central systems and initiate a cascade failure in their fleet." Rita studied the schematics of the mothership. "So we need to reach the central communication hub, plant the disruptor, and then destroy the ship's primary power core. And get out before it explodes," Jack added, though no one in the room believed that part was likely. The volunteers spent their final hours making personal preparations. Jack found Lisa in her lab, recording data and instructions for the resistance cells that might survive. "You should be coming with us," Jack told her. "You're the only one who fully understands the technology." Lisa shook her head. "Someone has to coordinate the ground attack. When the Dominion forces are disoriented, the remaining resistance needs to strike immediately." She paused, looking at him directly. "Besides, we both know this is a one-way trip." Jack didn't argue. They had moved beyond false hope long ago. The captured Dominion shuttle lifted off under cover of darkness, its propulsion systems eerily silent compared to human aircraft. Jack piloted while Tom handled navigation. The others checked weapons and equipment, a mixture of captured Dominion energy weapons and human explosives. Approaching orbital checkpoint, Jack announced as they left the atmosphere. "Broadcast the authentication codes." Marcus transmitted the stolen security codes. Tense seconds passed. "We're cleared," he said finally. "They think we're a returning scout vessel." The mothership loomed before them, a massive structure that dwarfed anything humans had ever built. Its dark, angular surface absorbed light rather than reflected it, creating the impression of a void in space. Smaller vessels moved around it like insects attending a queen. Jack guided their shuttle into a secondary docking bay, following the approach vector specified in the stolen flight plans. As the airlock cycled, the team donned captured Dominion environmental suits, their best disguise and protection against the ship's alien atmosphere. "Remember," Jack said as they prepared to disembark, "we move in formation like a regular patrol. No communication unless necessary." 20 minutes to reach the central hub. The interior of the mothership was a maze of corridors designed for beings with different proportions and perceptions than humans. The team moved carefully, following the memorized route. Twice they encountered Dominion patrols, but their disguises held. The central communication hub was a vast chamber dominated by a pulsing crystalline structure, the quantum communication array that linked every Dominion unit on the planet. "Begin placing charges on the secondary systems," Jack ordered as Tom and Lisa worked to interface the neural disruptor with the array. "Colonel, secure our exit route." Colonel Weber nodded and motioned to two team members who followed him back toward the corridor. The alarm sounded without warning, a disorienting pulse that seemed to vibrate through their bones rather than their ears. "We've been compromised," Rita shouted, taking up a defensive position. "How much longer?" 30 seconds, Tom replied, his fingers flying across the alien interface. The first Dominion soldiers appeared at the entrance, firing energy weapons that left scorching trails in the air. The team returned fire, using the chamber's architecture as cover. "It's done," Tom announced as the crystal array pulsed with new energy. The disruptor was online. Jack felt a moment of fierce triumph before an energy blast struck him directly in the chest, throwing him against the array. Through pain-blurred vision, he saw the rest of his team falling one by one. "Get to the core," he gasped to Tom, who was the only one still standing. "Complete the mission." As consciousness faded, Jack's last thought was of Earth, not as it had been before the invasion, but as it might be again. Free. The Dominion mothership shuddered as explosions cascaded through its systems. On the bridge, alien commanders moved in confused, jerky motions, their neural networks disrupted by Lisa's device. Emergency signals blared in frequencies that human ears couldn't detect, but the chaos was visible in the panicked movements of the crew. Tom dragged himself through the service tunnels toward the power core, leaving a trail of blood behind him. He was the last one standing from the strike team, carrying the final charges needed to complete their mission. The neural disruptor had worked better than expected. Dominion soldiers throughout the ship moved like malfunctioning machines, unable to coordinate their defense. For Jack, Tom whispered as he placed the explosives against the massive power core. "For all of us." The detonation sequence activated, he began crawling back toward their shuttle, though he held little hope of escape. When the core destabilized, the entire ship would become a miniature sun. On Earth, Lisa watched from the command center as Dominion forces worldwide suddenly stopped in their tracks. Some collapsed entirely, others moved in disoriented patterns, but their coordinated assault had transformed into confused individual actions. It worked, she breathed, then keyed the global resistance channel. All units, this is command. Operation Thunderstrike is successful. The Dominion neural network is down. Launch all counteroffensives immediately. Across the planet, resistance cells that had been driven underground emerged to attack vulnerable Dominion positions. In Europe, fighter jets assembled from scavenged parts targeted Dominion ground forces. In Asia, modified tanks rolled through Allien barricades. In Australia, resistance marines seized Dominion ships in harbor. The Dominion mothership exploded in a blinding flash visible from Earth's surface even in daylight. Smaller vessels in orbit, suddenly cut off from command, found themselves targeted by ground-based weapons the resistance had been saving for this moment. 3 days later, Lisa stood on a hillside watching human forces secure a former Dominion stronghold. Reports from around the world confirmed the same story. The invaders were in full retreat, their remaining ships lifting off to escape a planet that had proved far more dangerous than they had calculated. "We should establish contact with their empire," Colonel Weber said, joining her on the hill. He had been leading ground forces in the southern regions when the strike team launched their mission. "Make it clear that returning would be a fatal mistake." Lisa nodded, her face a mask of contained grief. Jack would have agreed with that approach. The radio at her hip crackled. "Command, this is Recovery Team Alpha at Mothership Crash Site. You're going to want to see this." The mothership had not completely disintegrated. Large sections had survived re-entry, crashing into the ocean before washing ashore along the Pacific coast. Recovery teams had been scouring the wreckage, salvaging technology, and gathering intelligence. When Lisa arrived at the crash site, a medical team was working inside a relatively intact section of hull. As she approached, the head physician turned with an expression of disbelief. "He's alive," the doctor said simply. "Barely, but alive." Jack lay on an improvised stretcher, his body burned and broken, but his chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. The Dominion environmental suit he'd been wearing had partially protected him from both the energy weapon and the ship's destruction. "Get him to the medical facility immediately," Lisa ordered, fighting to maintain her composure. "Use whatever Dominion technology we've salvaged if necessary." 6 months later, humanity stood transformed. The wreckage of Dominion ships and bases had yielded technological advances that would have taken centuries to develop independently. Clean energy systems powered rebuilding cities. Medical technologies saved lives that would have been lost before. Communication networks linked the scattered remains of human civilization. Jack walked slowly through the new Global Defense headquarters, his left arm and leg now partly cybernetic constructs built from adapted Dominion technology. The building had once been a Dominion command center, now it served as humanity's watchtower to the stars. "The translation of their database is 80% complete," Tom reported, falling into step beside him. The physicist now headed Earth's new technological development division. "We've identified at least 12 other spacefaring species in our galactic sector. Some potential allies, some definitely not." "And the Dominion?" "Their empire spans 27 systems. We were just the newest target, a resource-rich world with exploitable native life forms." Tom's expression hardened. "They're not accustomed to failure." Jack nodded, looking at the massive display showing the solar system's newly constructed defense grid. Satellites and stations equipped with weapons reverse-engineered from Dominion technology formed a protective sphere around Earth. "They'll come back eventually," he said. "With a larger force, better prepared." "And we'll be ready," Lisa replied, joining them with a tablet displaying new defense schematics. "Humanity doesn't just survive anymore, we advance." Outside the headquarters, Earth was healing. Green growth reclaimed areas scarred by the war. Cities rose with new architecture that blended human aesthetics with alien efficiency. In orbit, the first human-built interstellar ships prepared for their maiden voyages. They thought they had crushed humanity, Jack said, looking at the stars now visible through the transparent ceiling. Instead, they made us stronger than we ever would have been without them. Humanity had not merely survived, it had emerged transformed, united by shared struggle, and ready to take its place among the stars. Not as conquerors like the Dominion, but as defenders of their home and explorers of the unknown. The greatest journey was just beginning.